Hi, my name is Ashley, and I had Chapter 4, Sudan. Call opposes argument about Sudan in Chapter 4 that exclusionary behavior is the most apparent component for civil war recurrence. Sudan's conflict rose in 1963 when the first civil war began and was followed by another rebellion in the early 1980s, which is known as the Second Civil War. This was a very compelling case. Oil was a cause in the recurrence, but more significantly, sharia law, exclusion via Viesland, and political representation had a bigger impact in the early 1980s. This war also shaped tension between national fractions that wanted independence from Britain. The first Sudanese civil war lasted for 12 years, from 1955 to 1972. It divided the country and marginalized the South. This rose from conflicts stemming from the southern and northern regions of Sudan. The British and Egyptians seized control of Sudan after 1998 and eventually ratified a policy to treat the South and North separately. This resulted to forbidding Muslim traders and others from coming to the South, as well as wiping away the Arabic language and instead pushing for the English dialect. This approach was mind-blowing and resulted in Arabs getting stripped from pretty much everything. This allowed for only 30 officials to control the whole Sudan. In due course, the British would go back on the policy and was intrigued by the idea of a unified Sudan that would enrich independence. As independence got closer, in 1951, Egypt rescinded the Condaminian Agreement, deciding themselves as the British part in the South, but fell short in initiating sovereignty over Sudan. The first civil war transpired on the idea for self-government of the South and resulted from resistance from the North. According to Call, the resistance predated and predicted Sudan's independence on January 1st, 1956. On August 18th, 1995, the Equatorial Corps, which mainly consisted of soldiers from the South, had gotten an order to report for transportation to the northern postings, which were intended at diminishing and isolating the southern soldiers. The southern soldiers ended up attacking the officers from the north and stole their weapons and ammunition. News of the mutiny broke out, and the South soldiers across Sudan revolted. This caused 400 people to lose their lives, mainly of the Northerns. This revolt illustrated harsh suppression carried out by the North, leading to an outbreak of the Civil War. The South became frustrated and was outraged by what was occurring. Many years of discrimination infused by the refusal to grant federal status to the South. I feel that they had no other choice but to force an attack to have their voices heard. We continue to see the same behavior take place when a group of people want something. The exclusion of the Southerners continued to unfold through the late 1950s. They were completely excluded from the foreign ministry. Furthermore, the exclusion of the Southerners remained and the suppression only worsened, expanding the Southerners' marginalization and the Civil War. The next part of the chapter was very surprising to me because in most countries that face issues like oppression, peace is unheard of. Call acknowledges that Sudan had peace at one point. Colonial Ghaffar Muhammad Nameri had come into power as a socialist and secularist, but later shifted away from radical change after a communist coup was turned back. The United States liked Numeri's shift and provided $18 million for refugee resettlement in support of a peace accord. Numeri also wanted to negotiate an agreement of a stoppage to the 17-year civil war to gain the support from the South. But was he really genuine about this negotiation? The peace agreement seemed to be going in the right direction for the South under a regional government. The regional entity had legislative control over public security, education, and national resources like oil, as well as bringing back the Arabic dialect. There was another agreement that took place which incorporated thousands of rebels into the police force and military. This compromise preserved the unity of Sudan and is viewed to be a peaceful negotiation and an imperative component in both the 11-year interwar peace and recovery for the Numeri regime. I was intrigued to read that peace was able to arise, but I knew it sounded too good to be true given that we are studying a book called Why Peace Fails. Woefully, peace in Sudan did not last long. Numeri went against the accord and marginalized the Southerners. This was no surprise. He put together an agreement that he knew he could benefit from. This is another behavior we continue to witness throughout the chapters of this book. This started a second civil war that took place from 1983 to 2005 and resulted to millions of people's lives being taken. Nehemiah also imposed Sharia law throughout the regime, which affected mainly the South Sudanese citizens residing in the north. These people were being victimized by this law. Like most leaders do when there is conflict, Nehemiah reneged on a lot of factors of the accord, which resulted in many setbacks for the South internal divisions. This sadly isolated the South Sudanese once again. Overall, through Call's analysis of Sudan, I feel this case study backed up his argument that exclusionary behavior is the most apparent component to civil war recurrence. The Sudanese government exclusionary behavior highlighted Sudan's recurrence of civil war. I was puzzled to read that Nehemiah incorporated rebels into the police force and military as part of a peace agreement. This was a disaster waiting to happen. I was convinced by Call's argument and took notice of Sudan's government and Nehemiah's actions and incapacitated behavior through this case. The peace accord agreement was supposed to implement a formula for peace between the North and the South regimes, but instead, Nehemiah sabotaged and manipulated the people who felt he had the best interest towards a unified country. His actions caused many deaths in the Second Civil War. His actions ultimately displayed the reason why peace fails.